Hello guys, welcome back to the channel. England are through to the semi-finals of Euro 2024 after beating Switzerland on penalties. Myself and Wiz will talk about the game, shootout, Bukayo Saka's performance. We'll also preview the Netherlands semi-final, which takes place on Wednesday. So if you're new to the channel, please subscribe and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. It'd be great to read those. So Wiz, thanks again for joining, mate. So obviously finished 1-1 after extra time. England winning 5-3 on penalties. Again, never make it easier for ourselves, but the most important thing is we're through. So let's jump into the obviously 120 minutes. I think it finished one apiece. What were your thoughts on obviously the game? And there's a lot to obviously get through in terms of the change of formation, obviously that Gareth Southgate selected, etc. But what were your thoughts on and how the game was and how England played?
Yeah, it was. I mean, it was better. I think we moaned a lot in the last video you did, and yeah, it was much better. I don't want to take any credit for it. I'm not sure if Southgate saw the video you put out, Wesley. I mean, I'm not making any claims about it. We were the first people to push for three at the back that I'm aware of. So, but I think that made a difference in some ways. It was more of a variation on the previous tactics than a kind of out-and-out change to a three at the back. I think the big thing is Trippier and Saka pushing forward, and that made a massive difference. They were the highest players up the pitch through the game broadly. Kind of a bit weird how Kane played in the game as well, but I thought it was a much better performance. I think we were kind of chatting during the game at moments, and it was much more encouraging to see England on the front foot, seeming like they were trying to press higher up the pitch, get the ball back quicker, not kind of be very, very passive and sit back and play into the hands of Switzerland. So I think everyone has a better feeling because it was less of a kind of insipid performance than the previous game. Still a lot of improvement potentially to make, I think. But yeah, much more positive. Yeah, and I think everyone's feeling more positive about it. It just feels like, you know, maybe people feel that change in formation. Maybe it's coming through the penalties. There's a kind of sense of maybe re-established hope after the expectations early on, and then having those dampened by what have been pretty poor performances.
Yeah, no, for sure, mate. I think, obviously in the build-up to the game itself, there's a lot of chat among the obviously the well-known journos on the Athletic and obviously other publications about the fact that England are training in the build-up, in terms of playing a three at the back. I was like, right, okay, now obviously we're every country up and down the land and overseas supporting England, we're crying out for some sort of change, whether that was personnel or tactical, and obviously it's more the latter rather than personnel. Was sort of similar personnel apart from Konsa replacing the suspended Guehi, obviously. I thought Konsa did well actually yesterday, but so with that, knowing that obviously we were likely to obviously play a three at the back, and with the formation that's sort of similar to what you put out with on our last video, I felt a lot more confident because if we played exactly the same, like we've said it before, it's been said again, definition of insanity, expecting a different outcome. But with the change in formation and players looking more, especially having 2 10s and Foden and Bellingham, I thought, okay, well that seems a bit better, and I was more confident that we'd win yesterday, knowing that we've actually changed something, and the fact that, yeah, she said it was a gradual improvement. I don't think it was spectacular. Unlike that first half, I thought, okay, we did okay, but no shots on target. And then BBC pundits, obviously, Ferdinand, Lampard, and Richards, and obviously Gary Lineker was himself, like, I think going a little bit, a touch overboard with the praise. I thought we were better, but okay, for comparison to the shit beforehand, that's not saying much, is it? But I think I think you're right. There was definitely a more emphasis on pushing higher in the pitch, and I think there was a bit more movement, but still not, as I say, still no shots on target in that first half. So it's good in one way, but obviously not as good as we know it can be.
Yeah, I think they probably got overexcited just because the previous game was so poor, really, and we were bailed out of that. And I think expectations actually were higher in that game because it was Slovakia. But there was I think we had a lot more control. The first half, probably in its entirety is probably the best half of football we've played. I think early on in the Serbia game, first game, we were good.
Yeah.
But then they came out similar. I think it's a similar sort of game in lots of ways. But I can understand them getting overexcited because it was as if we understood their threats. We talked in the last video about Rodriguez progressing the ball and Arbaisha. I've learned how to say his name. Progressing the ball. And yeah, them coming down the left. And there were a couple of moments where I think the kind of thing that does get football people excited is there were two kind of consecutive sequences of pressing where we really looked like we knew what we were doing, where there was a real aggression about it. It was very, without wanting to be too kind of cliched about it, it was a lot more like the English game. It's a lot more like the Premier League, where you know there isn't as much kind of sitting back. There's a lot more front foot play, out of possession. And we did have a lot more control. So Bellingham seemed to get more space. I think we talked again in the last thing. We predicted most of this, Bill, really, to be honest. We talked about like a box midfield and how we've got more threat if we go up and match them. And I think the other thing, and in fairness, this is not something I was talking about Saka at left wing back, but having Trippier kind of cut in from the left hand side, we ended up outnumbering them. They had to pull like people over to kind of deal with it. I think Bellingham had more space. And the big thing, I think for me it was huge, was he learned how to accommodate both Bellingham and Foden a bit. I think they probably had their collectively best game. And Foden likes to operate sort of the inside right for Manchester City. That's where he gets lots of shots off there, lots of creativity. Bellingham is the same the opposite side, really, because he's got Vinicius Junior outside of him. He'll go out, he'll sometimes operate from the left, and he went out there yesterday a lot and was really effective. So actually, they came from the directions they come from for their club and where they cause the most damage. So I thought those things were really good, and it was really positive, and it's easy to go over the top about because it was like there was none of that cohesion previously. I think that's what everybody felt. It was disjointed. It was like, how can all these brilliant parts not make a good whole? And that's because it's football, and that is not what makes a team. Is the certainly not solely the quality of the individual parts. It is how they gel into an entire system. So yeah, I can understand the excitement. I think it dropped off in the second half, and maybe you want to come on to that, but I think that was part of the same old England in terms of this tournament.
Yeah, no, you beat me to it, boys. I was just about to say about the second half, and like I posted on Twitter, or X it is now, and a few others did as well, about like the fact that Switzerland were sort of getting into the game and England was sort of fading in that sort of midway through the second half, and you just, I mean, it's not going to change now, but you just want Gareth Southgate to be proactive. We've got a number of good options on the bench to use them while the game's slipping away from us, and it wasn't a great surprise that Switzerland in the end took the lead through Embolo. Decent play by Switzerland, but I mean, Stones were not the best sort of clearance, a bit of a mistake there, and obviously Embolo taps it in, and that was only, what was it, quarter of an hour to go? 75 minutes, and you thought, oh God, is this it again for England? Have we got to go to the well again and get a last minute equaliser or to get back in the game? But in the end, it was only 5 minutes later, and that's the thing about this England team certainly this time, but I think under Southgate in general, like previous England sides under probably Hodgson, Capello, who we've mentioned before, if that goal happened to them, would they get back in the game? I don't. Well, no, I don't think so, because based on the tournament history. So whereas this England side have got a bit of character about them and ticker, which I would say is more important than the individual skills of players, because at the end of the day, you can play well. Like Austria have earned rave reviews, but they're not in the tournament. Whereas England, and even Netherlands, who we're going to touch on, have I wouldn't say stunk the place out, but haven't exactly played amazing. And France as well, you would say. But all three of those teams, those nations, are in the semis, and others like Germany and obviously are out. Obviously depends on luck of the draw and which side of the draw, etc. But at the end of the day, doesn't matter how you play, as long as you get further in, especially in tournament knockout football, It's how far you go in it. So, and you know, like it's only 5 minutes later, the 80th minute, when you know the star boy, as they call him, Bukayo Saka. I mean, obviously, what a performance, player of the match by far, and you know, so it shows the strength of character. Obviously, we'll come on to his penalty in a bit, but obviously, you know, it was a great finish by Saka outside the air, right into the bottom corner of his left foot, and he deserves a lot of credit as well, because a lot of us, you know, us included, were like, "Oh, should Palmer take his place?" You know, on that right hand side, but yeah, he put in a hell of a performance, obviously, and got a deserved goal.
Yeah, he was fantastic, and I think that we can come back to England, but I think again focusing on the positive for him. I mean, I was pretty nerve wracked. I felt pretty confident in the penalty shootout. Strangely, again, I don't know whether I've just got old and been kind of numb to it since 1990 when we went out on pens, and I remember it. But I felt quite calm when he stepped up. I almost thought I'd rather us go out than him miss. Like, I just want him to score. I think because of the nature of the abuse he got before, the fact he's a young man, and despite obviously him being awful because he plays for Arsenal and a terrible human being, I did really want him to do well. And I was really, as a Chelsea fan, even I was rooting for him. He's an amazing example. I think, and he's exemplary of everything good about Southgate, the culture, the kind of way players conduct themselves, the way they communicate, the kind of solidarity and the putting themselves aside for the team. And Saka's just absolutely encapsulates that. He's just an incredible character. So I was absolutely thrilled for him. And he was brilliant in the game. Loads of dribbles, loads of kind of opening up the space. Was the most continuous, maybe exclusive threat in behind. He was sensational, really good defensively, as he's always been. Why? I think people forget now that when he was picked back in the previous Euros, there was a kind of bit of, well, why on earth is he picking him? I think Foden was fancied more and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But I think he's so good.
And sorry, was in Sancho at the time as well.
Who's been kind of ruined by a club in turmoil in Manchester United. But yeah, there was far more glamorous players in lots of ways, and far more fancied players than Saka. But I think that's what Southgate saw in it. I think he's probably a bit of his favourite, but I think his work rate, his sacrifice for the team, the intelligence of his positioning, the class of the guy, I think that goes a long way with Southgate. But yeah, I think in terms of England giving away the momentum in the game, I think it is very, very similar to Serbia, as I said. I think what you point out there about Austria probably being unlucky to go out but still going out, Germany probably being unlucky to go out, that Southgate knows that, I think that's, and it works against him in some sense because he doesn't play the kind of incredibly progressive football or potentially use the attacking talents England have got to their maximum potential. But by doing that kind of risk-averse, relying on moments of individual brilliance type of style of play, which is his general style, you do negate some of the bad luck out of the game. If you can make it, if you make it a 0.3 XG a piece game and you've got better players, on balance of probability you win and you take the chaos out of it. That's why Turkey was so fun, is they were just nuts. Like running about, like Arda doing brilliant things and like a lot of fun and like at one moment being really direct, and they were just really, really good and created a lot of chaos. That's the opposite of what Southgate wants. He wants order, stability, things like playing the percentages. England are really good at keeping players out of the hole, having good possession in the hole. They like filter the ball out wide, and it looks bad because lots of crosses are coming and things like that. But he knows that's less of a threat, so he's good. He's risk averse, but obviously there's a good side to that. But I do think, again, I think that wasn't a plan for what happened from sort of 50 minutes ish, where the Swiss came into the game much more, created lots of chances. That wasn't a really kind of established low block where they weren't creating. They were creating bits and pieces and chances, and he didn't elect to change it. Now, why we did that kind of dropping back and losing momentum, I don't know if it's fatigue. I don't know if it's fear. I don't know if that's a half-time tactical instruction. I don't know if it's a combination of those things. Southgate must know, should know. And so the fact that he left it, and I wonder if Kane could have come off earlier as well. I think he played the majority of the game. There's I don't know if you've seen the meme video. I can't say some of what's said in it because it's hilariously funny. The AI Sports News video of Gareth Southgate doing press conferences.
Yeah, I've seen the recent one. I've seen them this season, like during the tournament.
And one of the lines in there is Harry Kane thinks he's a CDM, thinks he's a central defensive midfielder, and he was in this game. He actually was. Generally, he was so deep. That doesn't help you getting out. So you either change that through instruction, or you change it through personnel. And I don't know whether instruction was going to help him because I think first half he looked very leggy. So the fact that, it's Harry Kane, so you understand it. But I just wonder, in those moments when the game situation is changing, yes, you've got your best laid plans, and in this game they were excellent and they worked brilliantly for a half. But when the game changes, the opposition have a right to adapt to your tactical plan and your strengths. And I just don't think we did that. And I think it really gave them the momentum, and it led to the goal ultimately because just an accumulation of pressure.
Yeah, for sure. But as we said, England's character has been personified in this Euros, and it was shown again also with Saka's equaliser. And Jordan Pickford had to make some saves. But what I found interesting, not so much the rest of extra time because it just everyone knew it was going to go to penalties. But I think some of the subs that were eventually made by Southgate, this is the first time we've seen Luke Shaw, not just in this tournament, but in any football for months. So he come on just before Saka equalised, and he obviously played the rest of the 90 minutes, and then extra time. So that's 42 minutes he played around, so which is obviously better than no minutes. So interesting to see what happened with Shaw in the semis against Netherlands. But obviously we'll come on to the penalties now, and I think it shows the sort of depth we've got in terms of penalty takers nowadays, because we could afford to bring on Alexander-Arnold near the end, Ivan Toney with just over 10 minutes to go, and Palmer come on as well in the main 90 minutes as well. So, obviously the penalties by, just getting the order, so by Palmer, Bellingham, Saka, Toney, Alexander-Arnold, all scores, so England obviously 5-3 on penalties. Pickford saving from Akanji's penalty, the first penalty. So, I felt, I can't have to see ever feel confident about penalty shootout, but I think we actually have been Switzerland on penalties before, actually, as well. A few years ago in the Nations League, third, fourth place playoff a few years ago, and the Colombia, the World Cup in 2018. I know, obviously, the Euros final against Italy we lost, but we've started to get a bit of a habit of winning penalty shootouts now in this era. And the fact we've got really good sort of technicians with penalties in this squad, rather than, I remember 2006 World Cup, we had to sub on Jamie Carragher at the end, because he was scoring him in training. So, obviously in the show he ended up missing. So, I think it just goes to show the different sort of the types of players we've got, and they're all brilliant penalties, and they had to be. I mean, obviously Cole Palmer, obviously he's cold Palmer's in it now. That was ice cold going first as well. Fair play to him. But then all the other ones as well, like obviously Saka's one. He was he's just third in. He was just hit the side netting, obviously in the goal, but in the side netting had to, because some of them dive really close to it. And same with Ivan Toney's one. I know he has the no look, but still to have the bollocks to do that in a quarterfinals of the Euros. I mean, and then again, Sommer got close to his one as well. And then as soon as Alexander-Arnold steps up, I mean, I know he's just a brilliant, obviously, a set piece taker, isn't he? I just had every confidence he smashed in the top corner. So, it must have been a thrilled whiz with obviously England getting through it, but just like the way we took the penalties, as if we were just taking penalties on Sunday League.
Yeah, for sure. And I just had the bright idea, I should have thought of it earlier, but to look up who didn't take one. So the people who didn't take one are Luke, who were on the pitch and would have been available to take one, Luke Shaw, Declan Rice, Eze, Kyle Walker, John Stones. I would say that's not a bad five. And some of them have taken penalties this year. That's why I think Luke Shaw has taken penalties. He's a good technician. Kyle Walker may well have, I think. So there's something there. Now, why is that good? Well, there's treble winners and those sorts of things. That makes a difference. There's characters. I think, I think Southgate has to take some credit, not only for the water bottle with the entire kind of Switzerland squad and the instructions. That's what you don't see and what goes into these moments a bit. That can be the difference between, Akanji scoring that penalty and then one of our players missing. So those fine details, it goes back to what you say, there's a lot of chaos in football. You can be the better team and go out on, the flapping of the wings of a butterfly, if you like. It's a random game. That's why people watch football and not basketball anymore, because it's boring. So but in those moments, the drama, the tragedy of it is well known to England fans. But the drama of it is hard to sort of resist and turn away from. I actually kind of enjoyed it this time. And I think because it's hard to put your finger on, but there's something in the culture. I think Southgate is not wanting to say everything's fine now and he's the greatest manager in the world, but that's where his strength is. You get the impression, and I think this was like, I think with the story of Saka in 2021 missing, he was able to come away from that with perspective, unlike some of the cretins who abused him on social media. But he was able to come away with perspective. He was asked in the press conference, did you think about 2021? He said, I'm not going to think about the past. And you believe him. And I think that's what different. There's a solidarity and kind of maturity when you hear Bellingham talk, when you hear Cole Palmer talk. These are young. I mean, I was mainly drunk at that age. I couldn't really string a sentence together compared to these guys. And they're elite sportsmen who have a total understanding of what it is to be a professional, to have experienced things in a really high-pressure environment on a consistent basis, to be looked to be the man at, for example, Chelsea, Arsenal, Real Madrid. So there's something about the weight of that responsibility, but there's also something underneath about the character of the people that they will know that the world does not end with that penalty. Whereas I think the weight of expectation in the past was so heavy on England players that it absolutely destroyed them ultimately.
It felt more life or death, or seemed from the mentality anyway.
Yeah, and I think that's maybe why the Germans were so good previously, because they are much more. I think there's something in the culture of England which is emotional and individualistic, whereas what you want in that situation is to feel that you're part of something greater. Win or lose, you've been part of something. There's always a consolation. If it's you versus the world, or you versus the news of the world or the sun who are going to destroy your life, that's different. If you've got complete solidarity behind you, you've got a team, coaches, as well as personal relationships, family. That, I know it sounds like it, but I think that's what's in those moments. I think those moments accelerate all those thoughts, like moments of intense pressure in any situation. So, and I will say, Tony, I said to my missus, watch this guy take the penalty. It melted her brain to see a guy walk up and not look at the ball. She said, he's not looking at the ball. I said, so it's not just soul or character or personality or support. There is technique as well. And when Trent went up to take the last penalty, I just said he will score. Because maybe the lack of miles in the legs, but he's such a technician. I think, you go back to your technique when the circumstances are difficult, when you're fatigued, when there's pressure, and his technique hitting a dead ball is basically as good as it gets, and he took an absolutely sensational penalty.
And the thing is, to add to that, like with some of Trent's free kicks, how he takes them, if he's only 20 yards out, so just outside the penalty area, to take a free kick, it's like a penalty anyway, because he'll just smash it in, or he'll force the goalie's mate to save, or like brilliant save. So when it actually is a penalty, I certainly felt, and obviously you felt the same. I'm sure others did, where you assume the inevitable, really.
Yeah, I think. there's always that risk. But I felt really confident, and I think, I think you feel that this team are more prepared psychologically, and I think, in terms of the technique of penalties, and I did hear something. This was an Athletic journalist talking about sports psychology approaches and getting in a breathing coach and stuff like that. It's very noticeable as you see like a big exhalation from people like Ronaldo before a free kick. I thought that was quite noticeable in England's penalties as well. And these are very micro margins and they might not work for you, but it's like, what does Dave Brailsford talk about?
The 1% is the marginal gain.
Yeah, exactly. The accumulation of marginal gains. And I think that part of their setup, I mean, some of the major things about not reacting in game, bad, but I think we get the payoff in these moments of psychological test and, to an extent, fundamentally tests of kind of character and the ability to execute under pressure. So, I was absolutely over the moon naturally to see us go through. And hopefully we don't let it get to that next time as well.
No, hopefully. Well, let's talk about it now. So obviously we played the Netherlands on Wednesday in the semis, and I'm just going to read out a quote from Cody Gakpo, obviously Liverpool Netherlands forward. He said today that everyone knows England and the Netherlands can play better, and I think that sums it up perfectly well. And obviously Netherlands are not like, not like yesteryear when they had like, especially in the forward areas where the likes of Ruud van Nistelrooy, Robin van Persie, or world-class players like Wesley Sneijder or Arjen Robben. But still, they seem to be more of a workman-like Dutch team. But, in the end, they finished third in their group behind Austria and France. But, they got through the quarters against Turkey, obviously last night as well. And they turned it around in the second half. They got Weghorst, who can they bring on as a sub who makes a difference. But, obviously they're not like not a throwback to unbelievably talented Dutch team, but maybe this works in their favour where they don't have those superstars as such. Hence they're in the semis, and there's a great chance, obviously, for both teams to obviously get to make a final. So, what are your thoughts on the Dutch, and what are your thoughts on their tournament so far?
Yeah, I think I totally agree with what you said. I think they're much more functional. And it's always, I think the World Cup final where they played Spain was a shock because Spain were playing the total football. So, they're much more functional, probably the most similar side to England in this tournament in terms of not being that coherent. They've got some really elite level talent, but it's not quite joined together. They didn't really lay a glove on France. They were lucky probably yesterday. I think there were some decisive moments. But I think they were more threatening generally without creating good chances, which was very much like England were in the game.
Just like us,
Yeah, so really, 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 really similar, and also only reacting when they went behind to bring it back, and then it being a bit chaotic. That's one thing, for all the order of Southgate systems, England went to full chaos mode at the end of the game. Yeah, I think what I suspect will happen is he'll play the identical side. And I think that makes sense because I think they progress the ball in somewhat a similar way as well. They've got Aki plays out wide. You've got Gakpo drifts out to the left. Xavi Simons against Turkey drifted out to the left. He'll go where the space is, but he might end up out there as well. And Reinders goes from that side as well. So Shorten in midfield is a much more defensive player. They're not so reliant on going down the left. They do progress with those two central midfielders. But I think the approach will be extremely similar from England. I don't know if they'll do anything with the personnel at all. What you mentioned, Luke Shaw, earlier, looked really good, did a fantastic job for a guy who's come back out of nowhere. The lost man is coming back into the England side and performed really well. I actually thought, although he played left centre-back, really, in that kind of three at the back, there was a moment where he overlapped Palmer, I think it was, and it was like putting your feet up after a long day to see someone make that run.
Yeah.
So there would be a lot of temptation, I think, and probably some amount of call for that, for the balance of the side. I think Trippier's positional discipline and stuff might just, be pure Southgate to stick with him. and maybe he's more adequately able to deal with Dumfries, who plays down that side and provides the wide option. Like, does a lot of water carrying out there and up and down. I think we've seen him in previous tournaments be really devastating at wing back and put an incredible shift in. So I think we'll do probably the same. I would stick with what I said last time, where I love how they were set up in this game. I would be very tempted to switch Foden out for Palmer, because I thought he came on and was, again, creating value with his time on the ball. But accept that that's going to be difficult now, because I think Foden had one of his better games, probably. Still not the level he plays at club level. But I think got in the right position, seemed more of a direct threat. Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. But I think it's going to be a similar sort of game as well. I don't think they're going to come out and try and suddenly embody the, Rinus Michaels mentality of the 1970s and try and, be everywhere all at once. That's not going to happen. They're going to play conservatively. So are we. Given the games we've seen, you'd bet the house on extra time. But I wonder if England are on an upward trend and have got the big momentum, and the Dutch are on a downward trend. And that might make the difference. The spirit in the country, the spirit in the camp, the way Southgate spoke after, the way the players spoke after. Yeah, I just wonder if that might edge it for us. That's where I see the game going, basically. I think it might be one thing from the Turkey I was going to say was, when I watched it last night, I thought the Swiss evacuated the area where Bellingham best operates for Madrid and for England yesterday, because Freuler went off up the park too much. They gave that same space against Turkey. And they've got Shulton there, who is a kind of much more conservative midfielder. I wonder if they'll deal with it with him. And then in that case, Rice will become and be even more important. I thought Rice was sensational. Like, not being spoken about, I thought he was amazing. He basically played single pivot a lot of that game, because Maiden goes up and down. Doesn't always get back into his defensive position, although he was pushed back in the second half. But Rice, first half, ran it like it was Arsenal. I thought it was sensational. I wonder, we'll see. We'll see. But you've got to negate the threat of Bellingham. They know that. Everyone in the world knows that. He's a £100 million player at 20 years old who went to Real Madrid. So it's how they deal with that, if they deal with that. And then what can you also do if they're disproportionately resourcing, getting rid of him, getting rid of his threat? Where does it leave space? Rice, Foden in the other pocket, the other side, whoever plays up front. So that's what I think we might see.
Yeah, and I think a key battle is down, obviously, Netherlands left and our right hand side, because Gakpo is one of the joint top scorers in this competition with 3 goals, and he's one of the main players. Obviously, at Liverpool, he's playing in a stacked attacking squad, so he's in and out of the team. Whereas for this Dutch team, they seem to be, in an attacking sense, they build it around him and Memphis Depay. So he's got the 3 goals, and he's a threat, isn't he? Goes into pockets of spaces. He's decent enough with his finishing. So whoever's on our right, whether it's Walker's a right centre back or Saka's there, or if they change it up, whoever's going to play there, they're going to have to keep an eye out on him. If they can keep him quiet, then I don't see a lot from the Dutch attacking wise, because I think they're similar to us. They seem to be on moments rather than a sustained sort of patterns of play. So I don't see it being a classic on Wednesday. We'll find out, I guess. But who cares? As long as we get through.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there. So thanks, Wiz, again for joining, and let's hope we're in another Euros final by the end of Wednesday night.
Yeah, fingers crossed. And fingers crossed it's in 90 minutes.
Well, yeah, don't bet on that, mate.
No, I won't be.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for watching. Subscribe to Gage Football if you're new. Leave a like if you enjoyed it. Leave your comments down below. And one thing left to say: come on, England!
Come on, England!